Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, presidential follies. Are both parties searching for Plan B? Iran nuclear deal. In whom do you trust? Exams? We don't need no stinking exams. Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the former Majority Leader of the Maryland House of Delegates, John Hurson. Past Chairman of the Montgomery County Republican Central Committee, Mark Uncapher. Former Republican candidate for State Senate, Jerry Cave. And political strategist, Susan Heltemes. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. For several years, the poor performance of Montgomery County students when taking final exams has been an embarrassment for the Montgomery County public school system and the elected school board. In July, when the results of the past year were released again with dismal results, school board president Patricia O'Neill touted the fact that the results were better than last year's, but finally admitted she doesn't have a solution for the poor student performance. Therefore, it was a bit of a surprise when only one day back from summer vacation, the school board voted to eliminate the traditional semester-ending final exams. Jerry Cave, was that the right decision?
It makes complete sense for you to give this question to me because nobody on this panel has more experience with bad exam reports than I do. So I can understand why I have the question. When I got involved in politics, I spoke to a friend of mine who had been in charter schools for 30 years. He said, Cave, when it comes to education and politics, the first thing you need to know is it's not about the students. And this decision is not about the students. This is all about their administrators and adults trying to avoid embarrassment. And people will go to great lengths to do that. But it's a tremendous disservice to the students because when they go to college, many of their grades will be almost entirely, if not entirely, dependent on their exam. So this is a bad decision. And the reason behind it is even worse.
Thank you, Jerry. Susan, is this an issue of if you don't like the results, as Jerry has suggested, you change the question?
Well, you know, this issue is probably going to go pretty much unnoticed since only 1 in every 4 families in the county have kids in schools. The rationale behind it are things like in college now they're changing and they're doing more things like projects and they don't have exams there. And the interviews I've seen on TV with teachers is they feel that they're going to have more time to actually work with students and they'll have them do special projects and that the tests are really irrelevant.
And yada, yada, yada.
Absolutely.
Mark,
Casey,
whatever.
Casey, our brand in Montgomery County has been the quality of our schools. So sweeping under the rug the fact that the results aren't as good as we've expected really isn't going to solve the problem. Jerry's right. Kids are going to college. They need to be prepared for college. And if we're going to hold out our schools to be so great, we ought to be able to demonstrate it with good exam results.
And the ultimate test, if this is a good decision, is to see how colleges respond when those kids start applying. You know, and maybe Montgomery County students will get, you know, a little bit more scrutiny now when they apply.
Yeah, I actually suspect this thing is going to be revisited. I mean, it's a big change. You don't make a change like this without a lot of thought and parent interaction and everything else. I have a feeling it's going to be revisited.
Well, there was a lot of thought. There was a lot of thought that we got to do something because we're our kids are having are embarrassing us by not, by failing these classes.
And it doesn't start till next year, so there'll be a year of discussion.
Yeah, and I think there needs to be a year of discussion. I mean, this is not a decision that you make unilaterally as a school board, although that looks like what they've done. But it does seem to me this is something that's going to need a lot of parental input, community input, and frankly, some feedback from colleges about what they think of this decision.
Well, I think
there's too many grades where are dependent on exams in colleges. You can't do this. And they don't have any solution. It's not like they said we're going to replace it with something that's well thought out. They're just going to get rid of it.
All right, well, I think we all feel like it's an issue that needs to be studied further. We're not sure about the outcome. Let's go on to our next topic, which is of greater importance in the scheme of things right now. The national debate over the proposed agreement to prevent the nation of Iran from developing a nuclear weapon is a subject that's going to affect us as Americans for years to come. In negotiating an arms control agreement with the nation that has long been known as a state sponsor of terrorism, the Obama administration has once again pushed the boundaries of the Constitution by not submitting the agreement to Congress as a treaty, but merely as an agreement between two countries. According to most Republicans and even some Democrats, if it looks like a treaty, walks like a treaty, talks like a treaty, is it a treaty? Nevertheless, according to the White House, it is only a treaty if the President of the United States says that it is. In addition to the treaty question, there are questions about the terms of the deal and fundamentally whether Iran can be trusted. John, contractual agreements between nations are called by various names: treaties, conventions, pacts, acts, declarations, and protocols. Yet none of the terms has an absolutely fixed meaning in international law. Shakespeare wrote in Romeo and Juliet, "What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet." Should this been a treaty, and should it have been submitted to the Congress?
Well, you said it, Casey. There are many terms for international agreements. I am not an international attorney. Don't play one on TV. But I will tell you there are many, many different ways to reach agreement between countries. First of all, treaties usually are bilateral treaties between one country and another country. This is a little different. You've got 5 or 6 major countries that are part of this agreement. And to disagree with you a little bit, this is being submitted to Congress under a statute passed by Congress, signed by the President, agreed to by both houses about how it's going to be considered. It is being submitted to Congress. They will have a chance to review it. So I don't think it's not as exactly, non-reviewed by Congress. So let's be clear about that.
Let's see how the other party reacts to this. Mark, Maryland's 2 senators, Democrat Ben Cardin and Barbara Mikulski, split their support on the Iran nuclear deal. Is that a telling sign? And is this a good deal for the United States?
Well, let me just give Ben Cardin kudos for voting against it. I know he had a lot of credit, a lot of pressure to do that. But let me come back to the legal issue. I think the stronger legal argument against what's being considered is that the Corker law, a law that was signed by the President, required that the entire deal, including the side treaties, all the side agreements, had to be submitted to Congress before the clock began to start. The argument in the House conservatives are making, House Republicans are making, is that clock has not started because the entire agreement with all the annexes.
What side deals have not been submitted?
That's a fact.
The agreements between Iran and the International Energy Agency.
That's not part of the agreement.
Yes, it is.
But it is.
No, it's not. It's not part of the agreement between the countries that are involved and Iran.
But the law,
that is an agreement between Iran
and
and the IEC.
But
we don't have all the time in the world. Let me go to Jerry on this. Jerry, the question really is this a good deal for America? Is it going to make America safer or unsafe?
It's a bad deal for everybody. We'll suffer the least of it.
What's the better deal, Jerry?
I'm glad you asked that. I was anticipating that, but let me tell you why it's a bad deal. Even the anticipation that Iran gets a nuclear weapon is going to allow them to intimidate the other countries in the Middle East. I'm not going to go into all the.
What's your plan? What's your big plan, Jerry, for a better deal?
John. But the thing is that if they can intimidate those countries, they can control 40% of the world's easily accessible and economically cheap oil, which is more power than we ever want to give to them.
Fear-mongering, Jerry. That's all you're doing.
All right,
now let me answer the question. You can negotiate with the Russians. You can ramp up the
The Russians have said they're not going to impose the sanctions.
We can negotiate with the Russians
they
and
have
the Chinese.
said they're not going to impose the sanctions.
We have a lot
the Chinese have said they won't impose the sanctions.
We have a lot of leverage
again.
with them.
Right. Gentlemen, I want to go to Susan on this because we're running out of time. Susan, will the agreement, whether it's passed, not passed, in whatever state that it is, whether you're for it or whether you're against it, is it going to have an impact on the upcoming 2016 presidential election?
I don't think so, because by the time we get to the actual election, maybe on the Republican side with a pack of 16 now, it may have a difference, but I think by the time the voters actually start going to the polls in the primary, this is not going to be an issue. There are far more issues, and this was a good deal for the United States.
With only 21% of the American people behind it, it's going to have an effect in the next election.
I think there is more than 21%.
Well, they haven't been able to find them so far.
They're
Susan.
out there.
Well, the polls, Jerry is correct in citing current polls. The question is, once the deal is implemented, is it going to have an impact, a lasting impact? And you're probably right. We're probably not. It's going to be too soon to tell, unless when Iran, with the release of all of the billions of dollars that's available
But
to them.
it's their money that has been frozen. I mean,
Well,
look at
Susan, aren't they a bad actor?
I
Aren't they a
You can admit that,
sponsor of
Susan.
terrorism? They've been determined by the State Department, by the President, and the Congress that they're a state sponsor of
Yes.
terrorism.
And the
The answer is
Republicans
yes.
still call Cuba a terrorist nation. So, I mean,
The head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was asked how many deaths in Afghanistan is Iran responsible, and his response in June, after while the agreement was being considered, was at least 500.
All right,
look at Colin
Susan.
Powell's behind
Susan,
it.
enough. We're breaking. When we come back from the short break, what does the presidential race look like after a summer of campaigning?
I didn't know how to
Find a good job.
Start a business.
get insurance or legal advice.
Further my education. Find affordable housing for my family.
It is very hard.
That's why we have the New Americans Expo. This informational fair will take place on October 4th
from noon until 6 at the Civic Building in Silver Spring, Maryland. Come and explore. You'll find all the information you need to succeed as a new American.
Hope to see you there.
All right, welcome back, boys and girls. While we were away, the race for the presidential nomination in both parties became very, very active and very confusing. The Republican presidential field has been turned upside down by the antics of celebrity builder Donald Trump, while the presumptive Democratic nominee, Hillary Clinton, has lost much momentum responding to issues related to her email server. John, even the New York Times is questioning the viability of the Clinton campaign, suggesting that Democrats need to think of a Plan B strategy. Is she in trouble?
No. I honestly think the New York Times is doing the right thing, which is pressing her and making sure that the answers come out about the email server, which I think she's handled very badly. Her campaign, not just her, but her campaign is handled badly. But at the end of the day, she's got 70 plus approval in the Democratic base, and I think she's going to win the Democratic primary. The only if there is whether or not the vice president gets into it, which sounds after today, he's less and less likely to do that. She's a strong candidate. She has a strong background. The Clintons have been through this before, so I think they'll come out and she'll be okay.
All right, Mark. Now let's talk about your party, which seems
I don't get to talk about Hillary.
Oh, I'd like to talk about your party.
maybe later, but right now I want to talk about your party.
Thank you.
Which has been flummoxed by the Trump phenomena, and Trump has been called everything from a carnival act to a malleable mess. What's happening in your party?
I feel like the laws of gravity have been completely suspended of things that come out of Trump's mouth that you would think would absolutely end anybody else's candidate. Seem to be, I mean, the mood in the electorate, particularly Republican, but also the Sanders electorate, is so hostile towards the quote-unquote establishment that it actually seems to feed in and make him stronger. But I would argue that at some point those laws of gravity will kick in again, and Trump will fail.
I know
Jerry,
the media.
I want to go to Jerry. Jerry, isn't he just a sideshow candidate? And this is very typical in an early part of an election, where people just want to vent, and so they demonstrate and they state that they're going to vote for this guy. But at the end, as Marcus suggested, reality will sink in, and this guy will sink like a stone.
You aren't even in the same room with the question. Trump is winning for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's bringing up existential threat to the country, which is illegal immigration. The Republicans know this, and that's why they're doing it, in spite of the fact that he has one of the least attractive characteristics known to man, and that's arrogance. But the other thing is, why Trump is being successful, it's not politics, it's because the man knows broadcasting. I've been in the broadcasting business for 30 years. I've seen this happen before. He's manipulating it perfectly, and he's like any good tactician, he is always on the offense. He's not only offensive, but he's always on the offense. And he has brought important issues to bear, and he is destroying the power of the Republican Party's leadership, and it was well-deserved. It needed to be destroyed.
All right, Susan, why is Mrs. Clinton's campaign off to such a rocky start?
Part of it is that there were 17 Republican candidates attacking her on a daily basis.
They seem to be attacking each other.
No. You got to listen carefully. They're all running after her, and most of them are trying to avoid each other. Okay, Trump, though, doesn't. But she is going to get through. It is a nothing issue. Colin Powell, all sorts of people in the past who have had that job had the same thing.
No, they didn't, Susan. That's a canard. He had a separate email server, but all official business was done through the State Department.
The bottom line is, it was
email.
not illegal. Was it smart and wise? No. But
Susan, none of us know whether it was illegal or not.
It was not illegal, and that has been said. Now,
by whom? Who said it?
Well, I mean, let's be clear, and I should have said this when I answered your question about Hillary. If the FBI and the Justice Department actually start an official investigation, which they have not, into whether or not she is, had made some type of illegal activity, which they have not started, but if they do, that would be a much bigger issue.
But at this point, it's not.
But I mean, it's still
any other
speculation
employee in government
as to
did that,
hold
they'd
on.
be
It's
fired
still
and
speculation as to whether or not what she did was right or whether
But
what she did was wrong.
What she did was stupid. That was stupid, and everybody admits that, and she admits it.
Finally.
So finally, but she admitted it.
But so the thing is that let the FBI and whatever do it. Let's focus on what she's saying and what she's going to do, as opposed to a Donald Trump who's out there everything. And the irony to me is he attacked Carly Fiorino's looks this last week.
Reprehensible.
But, and then, you know what? The next day, women supporting Trump went up.
That's how mad they are.
He is
They're
a
gonna put up with
racist,
anything
a bigot, a sexist, a hate monger, and people, I just don't get it.
I think the bigger question, and I'd love to hear Mark respond to this, and I know we don't have much time, but the whole impact of Trump on immigration on the party.
We don't have time for that. So we're going to do what I think is the rational thing. And I'm going to poll each one of you as to who your choice is, and we have to do it quickly. And I'm going to start with Susan.
Secretary Clinton.
Jerry.
Anybody but Bush, Trump, Cruz.
Mark.
Jeb Bush.
And John.
Secretary Clinton, but if Biden gets into the race, I'm going to start asking some questions.
I would love to see Carly Fiorino be the nominee. I think she's the smartest one of the whole bunch. Stay tuned for parting shots.
After what you see.
Lose the war in Vietnam. We quit. And it just made it so much harder for all those guys that were wounded.
You look and you see the guys beside you and around you. We realize you're all Americans. And no longer are you a particular race, you're a soldier.
I became the first resident of the Hanoi Hilton. We're going to come out of there, but we're going to come out of there with our honor.
On Saturday, October 24th, join Bob Schieffer at the universities at Shady Grove as we honor our more than 13,000 Montgomery County veterans who served in the Vietnam War.
And now with parting shots, Jerry Cave.
Illegal immigration will bankrupt the country, bankrupt the states. The bad trade deals are doing the same thing. What Donald Trump is saying needs to be said. And the American people find him as objectionable as many of us on this panel do. His mannerisms are terrible. His braggadocio is hard to take. He can't take the arrogance, but he is bringing to issue the issues that are terribly important and will save the country and destroy the Democratic Party, which is, I guess, the same thing.
Okay, let's go to John Hurson next.
I want to do a shout out to former President Jimmy Carter. The man has shown the way for every post-presidential candidate or president about how to conduct themselves, especially now facing his very difficult cancer. And more importantly, he brought Susan Heltemes to Montgomery County when he ran for president in 1976. She came from Minnesota, 80, with Vice President candidate Mondale.
Thank you, President Carter. Mark Uncapher.
Well, thank you, Susan, and thank you for Susan for giving me my shout out tonight, which is I've learned that the Silver Spring Transit Center is finally going to open in a few days. Unfortunately, we don't have the Gazette anymore, so we don't learn these things. It has almost taken as long as building the ICC, but not quite.
Okay, and I personally would like to give my deepest condolences to the family of Sam Statlin, our fellow colleague on the show who died a couple of weeks ago. Anne was an amazing woman. She was active in her community. She was active in her church. She was very active in the Democratic Party, and she was a great mate for Sam Statlin. Not only will Sam miss her, so will we. Also, I would like to quickly wish all of our Jewish viewers a Happy New Year. And today, as we tape, it's the 14th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorists, so we'll never forget that. And now, with a brief tribute to our former panelist and friend, Steve Kraszewski, who passed away last month, here's Casey Aiken.
On August 6th, 21 This Week panelist and my good friend Steve Kraszewski passed away from a pulmonary disease after 2 unsuccessful lung transplant surgeries. Steve was 58 years old, a native of Baltimore, who after a brief stint as a law clerk for Baltimore Judge J. Harold Grady, gravitated to the political scene, working for the Maryland State Senate Committees on Finance, Budget, and Taxation. He then went to Washington, where he worked for Republican U.S. Senator Larry Pressler of South Dakota. He later became Chief of Staff for then Congressman Bob Ehrlich, where he directed Ehrlich's successful campaign for governor in 2002 and served as Ehrlich's first Chief of Staff. Steve had the most incredible knowledge about the workings of government and provided insight every time he addressed a subject. Steve was passionate about politics, but he also understood that politics was fundamentally about people who were dedicated to making their government function better. As a result, he treated even those that had differing views respectfully and without rancor. Steve was a wonderful mentor and friend to many. He was instrumental in bringing the current governor, Larry Hogan, into the Ehrlich administration, and Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford credits him for his career in politics. A friend of Steve said, "In life, you meet few people who really change your life. Steve changed mine, like he did for untold others who were so much better for him, for his example and his life." That's perhaps the best thing that can be said about any man. We're joined by Democrat Party activist Stan Gildenhorn, Republican Bob Smith, political consultant Steve Kraszewski.
I'm heartened that our almighty council looks out for my best interests.
Here. All right, well, I got 3 bags here. Which one of these 3 bags is not subject to the tax?
Well, this one is a restaurant bag, and so because that is a special, it has a stronger lobby.
Less murders in jail. I mean, there are some good things.
Actually, it's increased. It's 1 murder per month.
No, it isn't.
It's actually increased.
Who do you think would be the best Republican to put forth on your side?
I think Larry Hogan would be the best because of his ability to raise money and to galvanize the base with a very populist message, which plays very well at this point in time.
I mean, I think that's what's going to happen.
That is such a red herring. How can you have a Nikki Haley, who's a minority, in South Carolina, which is about as historically Southern as you can be, that's running the state? How can you say that they're going to try to suppress? We're not allowed to export raw materials and oil. It's been a ban since the 60s.
But it's processed.
Finished.
But it's 41%.
That's gasoline. That's not oil. And I think it's up to all the viewers to keep pressure on their legislators and the governor to either reduce their taxes and cut wasteful state spending to give them a break. I'd like to thank all those that took the time to vote, with early voting, absentee, and certainly going in person. But I'd like to point out a little fact. Not everyone's happy with the results, particularly at the statewide level. And for those that voted, thank you. But you only represent 39% of registered voters. And not all adults in Maryland are even registered. So in effect, all those people that took the time to vote and study the candidates, they actually had 3 votes, because you gave them the proxy if you did not participate. So don't be a complainer. I think everyone should be optimists. There will be change with new candidates. Let's all pitch in and make this state stronger.